In looking at the more readily available editions of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras and their commentaries, there's one thing they all seem to have in common with relation to Book 4 of the Sutras, and that is they're awfully heavy going. They seem to take a rather abstruse philosophical perspective. They seem to be very biased towards the philosophical side of things, spiraling into remote little orbits of their own. And this isn't what Patanjali's about. It's not what yoga's about. Patanjali and yoga are about directing us back to our essential awareness. They're not speculating about anything. Patanjali's just describing things as they are, looking at the obstacles, all these tendencies which keep us from remaining in that realization of our essential awareness, samadhi. So it's actually very simple. And if things start getting too complicated, then the point's been missed along the way somewhere. The point's been lost. So before we get too bogged down, before I look at Sutra 12 of Book 4, let's just have a quick review of Sutras 2 onwards in Book 4. I'm not going to read out the sutras, but it might be handy if you had a copy in front of you, and a copy is freely available from the link below the video. So beginning from Sutra 2, Patanjali is talking about the great flow of life, everything that's going on, what's sometimes referred to as samsara. And he's simply pointing out that there's a possibility of transition from samsara. There's an option of moving into an entirely independent dimension. But there's nothing within this great flow which promotes this. There is nothing you can do to manipulate this great flow to make this transition. This transition just happens now and again. There's just lots of possibilities where the sun breaks through the clouds and the gate is open. Yeah, it's like a magic gate which appears. How often it appears, well, that's open to some speculation, but I suspect that gate appears rather a lot. That gate which allows the transition to another dimension. So that's Sutras 2 and 3. Sutras 4 and 5 are talking about the great flow, once again, this great flow of life, the great flow of samsara, of cause and effect. It's mind and its moods. This is the flow, this is what we are immersed in, this is what's carrying us along from the past to the future, is this great flow of our moods reinforced by our mental habits, our mental and emotional habits. And these are all based on the sense of us being an individual. Is it possible to talk about moods without relating this to an individual who's experiencing these moods? We might talk about the weather being temperamental, but that's just a bit of anthropomorphism. We're projecting human qualities onto the weather. The weather is simply something that happens. Whether it's good weather or bad weather depends on our interpretation of it, but weather is simply something that happens. We cannot apply any moral judgment to it. But that's what we do, don't we? Sometimes we even describe the weather in extreme circumstances as acts of God, some form of divine retribution. We're inclined to attribute moral qualities to the weather. This is what we do, isn't it? Rather than just let moods happen, because we've got this sense of individual selfhood, we attribute moral qualities to them. We might even describe some moods as spiritual and some moods as not spiritual. But you can only do that if you've got a strong sense of individual selfhood. So that's a bit of a contradiction then, isn't it? How can a mood be spiritual? But you'll find that a lot of spiritual people have got rather large egos. Very beautiful egos perhaps, but rather large. And there's not much spirituality there, except in name. So Sutra 5 explains that this is the dynamic of the flow. The actions of one mood fuel other different moods. And Sutra 6 talks about the transition once again. We make this transition through meditative focus. This is focus on our awareness, being aware of our awareness. Such actions are neither black and white. This activity consisting of meditative focus is not part of the great stream of things, of the life flow, because it consists of stepping out into this other dimension. Otherwise, this life flow, which consists of mind and its moods, which is based on the sense of individual selfhood, is fueled by the dynamic of attachment and aversion. And it's all automatic, it's all happening without any awareness, in ignorance. And in this way, definite behaviour patterns get established. We get locked into these definite behaviour patterns, as Sutra 8 says. And Sutras 9 to 11 are just spelling this out in more detail. This is what's going on, no matter who you are and in what situation you are in. This is the universal situation, is that there's a procession of memories and psychological tendencies. These are what fuel our moods. And they have no beginning, because that is their nature. Their very nature is one of dissatisfaction, of wanting to be resolved. This is what the Buddhists call dukkha. Their very nature is one of dukkha, of a niggling dissatisfaction. There's always a sense of dissatisfaction. But what happens is we can develop dispassion towards our memories and tendencies through practicing the transition into the dimension of awareness. And so the cause and effect of one mood into another is undermined. So this procession of memories fueled by our tendencies, of our moods, this flow of moods, brings with it a sense of the past and a sense of the future. And we'll look at these in the next video.